$180,000 a year. A beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs of Atlanta. A BMW in the driveway. Family trips to Cancun every summer. From the outside, Marcus looked like he had made it, but he only had $1,200 in his savings account. Not because of a medical emergency, not because he lost his job, not because he was reckless with money, just because everyday life quietly consumed everything he earned. And here's what should scare you. Marcus isn't unusual. He might be sitting in your chair right now. There's a name for what Marcus has. Economists and behavioral finance researchers call it high-income poverty. And the reason most people have never heard that phrase is because it sounds like a contradiction. How can someone be poor if they're making good money? That's exactly the question. And the answer is the thing that's been quietly destroying the financial lives of millions of Americans who are doing everything they were told to do. But here's where it gets interesting, and I need you to stay with me on this, because the real explanation is not what you think it is. Most financial content will tell you it's about discipline. They'll say Marcus just needs a budget. He needs to stop buying coffee, stop eating out, stop treating himself. And look, I've been in finance for 30 years, and I've heard that advice given 10,000 times, and I can tell you with complete confidence, that is not what's happening here. That advice doesn't just fail to solve the problem. It fails to even identify the problem correctly. The trap Marcus is in wasn't built by his bad habits. It was built by his success. Think about that for a second, because I'm going to come back to it. When Marcus got his first big promotion, let's say he went from $65,000 to $95,000. He didn't think of it as a windfall. He thought of it as a correction. He thought, finally, I can afford to live the way I should be living. So the car got upgraded. The apartment got upgraded. The vacations got a little longer. The dinners got a little nicer. Not extravagantly, just appropriately, he told himself. Just commensurate with who he was becoming. And then he made $120,000. And the same thing happened. And then $150,000. And the same thing happened again. Every single time his income went up, his lifestyle absorbed the new money within about 6 months, and he was right back to feeling the same low-grade financial anxiety he'd always felt. The number on his paycheck kept changing. The feeling in his chest never did. This is called lifestyle inflation, and you've probably heard that term before. But what almost nobody realizes is that lifestyle inflation is not primarily driven by greed or weakness. It's driven by something much more powerful. Something baked into how human beings process social reality. Here's what I mean. When Marcus makes $65,000, his reference group, the people he compares himself to unconsciously without realizing he's doing it, are other people making around $65,000. They drive similar cars, live in similar neighborhoods, take similar vacations. He feels basically fine because he's roughly where everyone around him is. But then Marcus gets promoted. And suddenly, the people he works with, the people he networks with, the people sitting across from him at conferences, those people are making $95,000, $110,000, $140,000. And they live a certain way. And Marcus, without ever making a conscious decision, starts recalibrating what normal looks like, what reasonable looks like, what he deserves. The comparison doesn't feel like insecurity. It feels like common sense. And this is the part that should worry you, because it means the trap gets harder to escape the more successful you become. The higher your income goes, the higher your reference group spending goes, and the more your brain interprets keeping up as just living a normal life. You're not being reckless. You're just being a person in your social environment. And that's exactly why it's so effective at draining your wealth. But that's not even the real problem. The spending is the symptom. The real problem is what the spending prevents. Let me give you two people. Same age, 34 years old. Same income, $130,000 a year. We'll call them Marcus and David. Marcus lives the lifestyle. Nice house, nice car, nice everything. His take-home after taxes is around $7,800 a month. His fixed expenses, mortgage, car payments, insurance, subscriptions, minimum debt payments, eat up about $5,400 of that. He has roughly $2,400 left for food, entertainment, and everything else. At the end of most months, he saved somewhere between $0 and $400. Some months he's carrying a small balance on his credit card. He tells himself he'll invest when things are more stable. David makes the same money. But 5 years ago, David made a different decision when he got his first big raise. He kept his lifestyle where it was. Not forever. Just for 2 years. He lived like someone making $75,000 while earning $130,000. And he put the difference, roughly $1,800 a month, into index funds. He did that for 2 years, then gave himself a modest upgrade, and kept investing what he had left. Today, at 34, David has about $87,000 in his investment accounts. Marcus has $1,200 in savings and $23,000 in credit card and personal loan debt. Here's the number that matters. If David does nothing, if he never invests another dollar for the rest of his life, that $87,000 grows to approximately $690,000 by the time he's 65. Compound interest, 31 years. The math is mechanical, and it does not care about your intentions. Marcus, at the same age, is not even at zero. He's in the negative. And every month he waits, the gap between him and David gets wider, not narrower. Because David's money is now making money, and Marcus's money is making someone else's money. Specifically, it's making the bank's money, it's making the credit card company's money, it's making the car manufacturer's money. Marcus isn't bad with money. Marcus is systematically transferring his wealth to other people while feeling like he's just living his life. And this is where everything starts to break. Because Marcus knows something is wrong. He feels it. He opens his banking app and feels a specific dread that he's gotten used to, like a low hum in the background of his life. He's thought about fixing it. He's Googled it. He's downloaded budgeting apps. He's had the conversation with his wife. But every time he sits down to actually make changes, the problem seems too big and too immediate at the same time, and he doesn't know where to start. So he doesn't start, and the months keep passing. What Marcus doesn't understand, and what most people in his situation don't understand, is that he's not dealing with a math problem. He's dealing with a systems problem. And you can't solve a systems problem by trying harder. You have to change the system. Here's the other thing nobody talks about. High-income poverty doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects your decision-making in ways that make the problem worse over time. There's research out of Princeton, work done by Sindhil Mulanathan and Eldar Shafir, showing that financial scarcity, even when it's not extreme, occupies mental bandwidth. It's like running too many applications on your computer. Your processing power goes down. Your ability to make good, long-term decisions decreases. You become more impulsive. You focus more on the immediate problem in front of you and less on the larger pattern. So Marcus, who is stressed about money despite making good money, is actually cognitively impaired when it comes to making financial decisions. The stress of scarcity makes him worse at solving the problem of scarcity. It's a loop, and it tightens. He takes on an extra freelance project to make more money, and the stress of the extra work means he orders more DoorDash, buys more little conveniences to cope, and ends up net neutral by the end of the month. He gets a small bonus, and instead of investing it, he pays down one credit card. The responsible choice, it feels like. And then the next month, because that card has room again, he uses it. He tries to cut back on restaurants and feels deprived and gives up after 3 weeks. He's not failing because he's weak. He's failing because he's trying to use willpower to fight a structural problem. And willpower always loses to structure. Always. Now here's the part I want you to sit with, because this is what separates the people who get out from the people who don't. The exit from high-income poverty is not a dramatic act. It's not a radical lifestyle change. It's not moving to a cheaper city, or selling the BMW, or canceling every subscription. Those things can help, but they're not the mechanism. The mechanism is automation and sequence. Let me explain what I mean, and then I'll tell you what happened to Marcus. Because Marcus's story isn't over yet. The reason most budgets fail is that they require you to make good decisions multiple times every day under variable levels of stress with impaired cognitive bandwidth. That is an unreasonable system. Nobody wins that game long term. The reason automatic investing works is that it removes the decision entirely. You don't decide to invest. The money moves before you ever see it. Your brain never registers it as available, so it never calculates it as something you could spend. This isn't a trick. It's just working with your psychology instead of against it. But here's the piece most people miss. The sequence matters as much as the amount. When Marcus gets his paycheck, his current sequence is money comes in, bills get paid, life gets lived, whatever's left might get saved. That sequence produces zero savings every single time because life has no natural ceiling. Life will always expand to consume available money. It's not a personal failure. It's just how spending works. The working sequence is money comes in, savings move automatically on day one, bills get paid, life gets lived with what's left. Same income, same expenses, different sequence. Completely different outcome over a decade. This is what financial people call paying yourself first, and you've probably heard it, and it probably sounded obvious, and you probably haven't done it. And I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because the reason it sounds obvious and doesn't happen is that there's a gap between understanding something intellectually and building the structure to make it automatic. That gap is where most people live, and they live there for years. Here's the other thing Marcus did wrong, and this one is harder to talk about. Marcus treated his income as his identity. When people asked him what he didn't just tell them his job. He performed it. The car performed it. The house performed it. The vacations performed it. And I'm not judging that. It's deeply human to want to be seen as successful. But Marcus had crossed a line, quietly, without noticing it, where maintaining the appearance of success had become more important than actually building it. He was spending future security to buy present status, and the trade was getting worse every year. Here's a number that might reframe things for you. The average American millionaire, not the inherited wealth, the people who built it themselves, drives a car worth $35,000 or less, lives in a house that is not the most expensive house in the neighborhood, doesn't have the flashiest LinkedIn profile or the most exotic vacation photos. What they have, quietly, invisibly, is a stack of assets that nobody can see, growing compounded every day, whether they're awake or asleep. Wealth is private. Spending is public. And we've built an entire culture around optimizing for the visible thing while neglecting the invisible one. Marcus didn't realize this until he was 41. He and his wife had a conversation. The real kind, not the surface kind. On a Sunday night after their older daughter asked if they could go to Disney World, like her friend Emma's family did. And Marcus said, yes, of course, without thinking, and then opened his app after she went to bed and sat in the kitchen for a long time. He wasn't broke. He was making more money than his father had ever made. But there was something in that moment, sitting in his kitchen that he'd spent too much to be in, that he couldn't shake. What was the plan? If something went wrong, if he lost his job, if his wife got sick, if the market shifted in his industry, what was the actual plan? There wasn't one. There had never been one. There had just been the assumption that more income would eventually fix everything, and the years had kept passing, and it hadn't. That night, Marcus did something he'd been putting off for 4 years. He wrote down every single monthly expense, not to judge them, just to see them. And what he found was that about $800 a month was going to things he genuinely didn't care about. Subscriptions he'd forgotten, a car payment on a car he could have bought cheaper, a storage unit full of things he didn't use. Not the big stuff, the stuff you stop seeing because you've stopped looking. He moved $500 a month to auto-invest the next morning. Just $500, not $2,000, not some radical number. $500, automated, gone before he ever had a chance to think about it. He didn't change anything else. He didn't do a dramatic overhaul. He just started. And here's the thing about starting small. It's not that $500 a month is a lot of money. Invested for 20 years at historical average returns, it's around $330,000. That's not nothing. But more importantly, starting is the mechanism for continuing. Marcus looked at his investment account 3 months later and saw $1,500 in it. Money he hadn't missed. Money that had just appeared. And something shifted. Not dramatically, just slightly, just enough. 6 months later, he was at $800 a month. A year later, he renegotiated his mortgage rate, dropped his car payment by $220 by refinancing, and was investing $1,400 a month. He didn't move. He didn't change jobs. He didn't give up vacations. He just changed the sequence and plugged a few holes he'd been too overwhelmed to look at before. Marcus at 44 is not wealthy. Not yet. But he's on a path that actually leads somewhere. For the first time in 15 years of making good money, he is building something. The anxiety hasn't disappeared, but it's changed texture. It's less like dread and more like impatience. And that's the distinction I want you to carry with you, because it matters more than any specific number or strategy. High-income poverty is not a money problem. It's a time problem. Every month you spend without building, you're not just losing that month. You're losing the compounded version of that month, stretched out over decades. At 30, a dollar invested is worth about $8 at 65. At 40, that same dollar is worth about $4. At 50, it's worth about $2. You don't just lose the dollar, you lose the exponential version of the dollar. And the truly painful part, the part I want you to sit with right now, is that this is not recoverable in the way most other problems are. You cannot go back and reinvest your 30s. You cannot undo the years. Time is the one resource in finance that cannot be replaced, only spent. And most high earners in America are spending it without realizing it. Funding a life that looks prosperous from the outside and feels uncertain from the inside, every single day. So here's the question I'll leave you with, and it's not rhetorical. Not what your income is, not what your car costs, or what your house looks like, or what number impresses people at dinner parties. What is your actual number? What is in your investment accounts, your retirement accounts, your net worth after you subtract the debt? What would happen to your life if your income stopped tomorrow? For a lot of people making genuinely good money in this country, people who have earned their success, who have worked hard, who are not irresponsible, the answer to that question is more uncomfortable than they've ever let themselves admit. The trap isn't that you're failing. The trap is that you look successful enough from the outside that nobody, not your friends, not your family, not your LinkedIn connections, not even you most of the time, asks the real question. Marcus asked it at 41, in his kitchen on a Sunday night. The only question that matters now is when you're going to ask it.